Okay, I can see it now. The rotors are kicking up a damn hurricane down there on Primrose Lane. Mrs. Henderson, Karen, is probably having a full-blown, aneurysm-inducing conniption. Her prize-winning petunias, the ones she drones on about at every HOA meeting, they're about to get a real up-close and personal taste of military-grade downdraft. And you know what? I'm not even a little bit sorry. That sound? That's not your average lawnmower, folks. That's a twin-engine tandem rotor heavy-lift helicopter, a CH-47 Chinook, to be precise. And Karen? She's the one down there looking like her head's about to spin clean off, her perfectly sensible pastel cardigan flapping around her like a straitjacket. You'd think I'd parked an alien spacecraft on her azaleas, which, come to think of it, might have been less disruptive and easier to explain to the FAA. The massive olive-drab beast is currently hovering about 50 feet over what used to be my front lawn, though it's rapidly becoming a wind-swept dust bowl. My struggling rose bushes are performing a violent tango, and I think I just saw one of my garden gnomes achieve liftoff. Below the helicopter, a sling full of vital rescue gear, medical kits, ropes, a Stokes basket. The works is slowly, majestically, ascending towards the open cargo bay. It's a sight, truly. Probably visible from space, or at least from the next county, where they're probably wondering if we've finally seceded. But how did we get here? How did a simple Saturday morning, a routine call-out for the volunteer mountain rescue team, devolve into what looks suspiciously like an unsanctioned military operation right in the heart of the meticulously manicured, obsessively regulated Serenity Acres HOA? Well, it all started about 5, maybe 10, agonizing minutes after Karen decided she was the queen of this particular molehill, and the access road to the Lost Man's Peak trailhead was her personal fiefdom. It all started with a panicked voice on the radio, cutting through the blissful silence of my attempt to sleep past 7 a.m. for the first time all week. County Rescue, this is dispatch. We have a 911 call, 2 hikers, Lost Man's Peak, North Face. Adult male, possible compound fracture, lower leg. Adult female, reporting early stages of hypothermia. Coordinates to follow. Weather is deteriorating up there. How quick can you mobilize? Saturday. My one day to sleep in. My one day to not think about splints or exposure. Of course. I keyed the mic on my bedside unit. Dispatch, this is Johnson, County Rescue. Team is mobilizing now. ETA trailhead. 20 minutes, traffic permitting. The adrenaline, that old familiar friend, was already kicking in, washing away the sleep. This is what we do. It's why we train, why we give up our weekends, why my coffee intake rivals that of a small South American nation. 20 minutes later, 2 trucks loaded with gear, myself in the lead, Sarah, our medical lead, beside me, and Tom, our comms guy, in the back. We're racing towards the quickest access point, a gravel service road that skirts the edge of Serenity Acres. It's a designated emergency route. It's on all the county maps, or so we thought. We rounded the bend, tires spitting gravel, and screeched to a halt, not because of a fallen tree or a washout. Oh no, it was blocked. Blocked by Karen Henderson, standing resolute in a powder blue golf cart parked sideways across the narrow road, arms crossed, a look of grim satisfaction on her face. And behind her, glinting in the morning sun, was a newly installed, very shiny, very illegal-looking metal gate, complete with a keypad and a prominent "No Trespassing Serenity Acres HOA" sign. I killed the engine, the sudden silence amplifying the chirping of oblivious birds. "Morning, Mrs. Henderson," I said, trying to keep my voice even as I climbed out. The air already felt charged. "We've got an emergency up on the peak. Injured hikers. Need to get through." Karen consulted a clipboard that seemed surgically attached to her hand. Her gaze flicked over me, then our truck, with an expression usually reserved for discovering a particularly resilient strain of garden pest. "This is Serenity Acres Access Point Alpha 7, she announced, her voice crisp enough to chip ice. "As per HOA Regulation 4, subsection B, paragraph 3, all vehicular traffic must be pre-approved by the committee, with 72 hours written notice. I don't see your emergency on my schedule." Sarah leaned out of the passenger window, her usual calm demeanor already fraying. "Ma'am, people are hurt. This is a rescue. We don't exactly schedule emergencies," Karen sniffed. "And their lack of preparedness is disturbing my community's legally mandated Saturday morning peace and quiet. The bylaws are very clear about noise pollution before 10 a.m. Your diesel engine, for instance, is quite robust." I took a breath. "Deep, slow?" "Mrs. Henderson," I began, aiming for the kind of patient tone one uses with a particularly stubborn toddler or a confused badger. "There's a county easement on this road specifically for emergency services. It's been in place for 30 years. You can't block it." "Easement is such an aggressive word, don't you think?" she countered, adjusting her visor. "We prefer negotiated thoroughfare." "And negotiations, Mr. Johnson, Mike Johnson, head of County Volunteer Rescue." I held out my ID. She glanced at it as if it were contaminated. "Mr. Johnson," she continued, a small, triumphant smile playing on her lips, "negotiations are currently closed due to unauthorized petunia trampling last spring during the unfortunate barbecue incident. By undesirables." She delivered this last word with a pointed glare at our slightly muddy truck tires. I vaguely remembered something about a rogue bouncy castle and a spilled keg, but that was the Boy Scouts, not us. The radio in the truck crackled, Tom's voice tight with urgency. "Mike, update from the female hiker. He's in a bad way, screaming a lot. She thinks he's going into shock, and the fog's rolling in thick up there. My patience, never a particularly deep well to begin with where bureaucracy was concerned, was rapidly evaporating. Lady, I swear, if these people die because of your power trip over some damn petunias," I muttered, then caught myself. Civility, professionalism, even when faced with weaponized pettiness. "We don't have time for this, Mrs. Henderson," I said, my voice firmer now. "Open the gate, or we will find a way to open it for you." A slight exaggeration, as our trucks weren't equipped with battering rams, but the sentiment was there. Her eyes narrowed. "Is that a threat, Mr. Johnson? Because I'll have you know I am the duly elected president of this homeowners association, and I will not be intimidated by public servants with an entitlement complex." This was going nowhere. Fast. And nowhere was a place two injured people on a freezing mountainside couldn't afford for us to be. We discussed alternative routes. They'd add at least an hour, maybe more, and the recent rains had made the old Miller's Trace nearly impassable for anything less than a tank. The trucks might not make it. Time was a luxury we didn't possess. My fists were clenched so tight my knuckles ached. I could feel a headache starting to throb behind my eyes. Sarah was on the phone, her voice low and urgent, trying to get a Forest Service helicopter, but she was shaking her head. The weather window was closing fast for them due to the incoming fog at higher altitudes. They couldn't get low enough to where the hikers were pinned down. We were, quite literally, stuck between a rock and a cairn. "All right," I said to my team, turning away from Mrs. Henderson, who was now taking photos of our license plates with her phone. "Tom, call the sheriff's department. Explain the situation. Tell them we're being obstructed from performing a life-saving rescue. Sarah, keep trying to raise those hikers. Get an update on their vitals if you can." Officer Miller arrived about 15 minutes later, looking young enough to still be attending his high school prom. He sighed when he saw the golf cart, the gate, and Mrs. Henderson, who immediately launched into a high-pitched, indignant speech about her rights, the sanctity of HOA bylaws, and the general decline of Western civilization, as evidenced by our muddy tires. All right, folks, what's the... Oh. Miller's shoulders slumped a little. Hi, Mrs. Henderson. Another... access discussion? He sounded weary, like a man who had fought this particular battle many times and lost every single one. Officer Miller! Thank goodness you're here! Karen exclaimed, her voice a quavering symphony of victimhood. This... individual, she gestured at me with a dismissive flick of her wrist, is attempting to violate HOA sovereignty. He's using threatening language, and his vehicle is leaking oil on our pristine, eco-friendly asphalt. It wasn't, for the record. Our trucks were maintained better than her prize-winning roses. Officer, I interjected, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. We're the county rescue team. We have 2 seriously injured people on Lost Man's Peak. One has a compound fracture, the other is hypothermic. This woman is blocking a designated emergency access route. Can you please compel her to open the gate? Officer Miller rubbed his temples, a gesture I was starting to empathize with deeply. Mike, I know, dispatch told me. But Mrs. Henderson has, well, she has a very active lawyer, and the county supervisor on speed dial. Last time we had a gate disagreement over at Whispering Pines. It took 3 deputies, a SWAT team negotiator, and a court order to sort out a dispute involving a rogue garden gnome that was allegedly encroaching on community property. Unless there's an immediate threat happening right here, right now. The immediate threat is up on that mountain, officer, I practically yelled, then reined it in. It's up there because she won't let us get to the mountain. People could die. Doesn't that constitute an immediate threat? Karen was now on her own phone, her voice dripping with sugary venom. Yes, Councilman Withers. It's Darlene Henderson. I am being besieged by a band of ruffians in official-looking vehicles. They have equipment, and they're making a dreadful racket. My nerves are simply shot. Yes, I'll hold for your aid. I looked at Officer Miller. He gave me an apologetic shrug. My hands are pretty much tied, Mike, unless she, assaults you or something. Then I can step in. Property disputes with HOAs, they're a nightmare. They have binders full of rules thicker than the phone book. My frustration peaked. Bureaucracy and bullheadedness were going to kill someone. We were losing precious minutes. The hikers were getting colder, their conditions worsening. I was pacing like a caged animal. Sarah was desperately trying to get a clear signal to update the hikers' status, her face pale with worry. Tom was looking at maps, trying to find any other conceivable way up that mountain that wouldn't take us until next Tuesday. My mind was racing. There has to be another way. Think, Mike, think. The usual options were out. Ground access was blocked. Low-altitude air support was a no-go due to the localized fog on the peak. We needed something. Unconventional. Then it hit me. A memory. A crazy, long-shot, probably highly illegal memory. My old Army buddy, Dave Reynolds. Dave owes me. Big time. From that incident in Arizona involving a runaway weather balloon, a prize-winning pig named Petunia, the irony was not lost on me even then, and a rather significant misunderstanding with the local constabulary about agricultural zoning laws. Dave is now a pilot, a very good pilot, with access to interesting aircraft. The transformation in my thinking began. A tiny spark of insane hope. No, I muttered to myself, walking a little distance away from Karen's continued tirade about property lines and unauthorized loitering. That's insane. Completely nuts. Wouldn't work. Couldn't work, could it? I pulled out my phone, shielding the screen from the weak drizzle that had started to fall. My heart was hammering against my ribs. This was a Hail Mary pass with a blindfolded quarterback during a hurricane. I scrolled through my contacts, found Dave's number. It rang 3 times. Reynolds, a calm, slightly amused voice answered. "Dave, it's Mike. Mike Johnson." A pause. Then a low chuckle. "Johnson? Well, I'll be. Last I heard you were chasing sheep off a runway in Nevada. What's up? Don't tell me you found that weather balloon. The reward's probably expired by now." "Funnier, Dave. Much funnier. I'm in a bit of a unique situation." I quickly explained the hikers, the mountain, the blocked road, and the crux of the problem, Karen. "An HOA president, you say?" Dave's voice was rich with mirth. "The natural enemy of freedom and common sense. I like it. What do you need, Mike? Don't tell me you want me to buzz her prize-winning azaleas." Tempting, Dave, very tempting. But no, I need a bird, a big one, capable of a vertical lift, substantial payload. And I need it, like yesterday. Civilian side if possible, but I'm flexible. Another chuckle. "Payload? Mike, you're not trying to move a, controversial statue again, are you? Because my insurance still hasn't recovered from the Leaning Tower of Pisa Garden Gnome incident. Life-saving equipment, Dave. Solemn promise. Just unconventionally located at the moment. And there's an HOA president involved who's making it impossible to get it where it needs to go. Think of it as a humanitarian mission with a slight element of aggressive problem-solving. We need to get about 500 pounds of gear from point A, which is currently inaccessible by ground, to point B, which is my front yard, and then from my yard up to a staging area on the mountain." Dave was silent for a moment. I could hear him typing in the background. "Point B, your front yard. You got an LZ there that can handle a heavy?" "Big enough for a Chinook, if you squint and don't mind losing a few shingles," I said. "It's clear of power lines. Mostly." "A Chinook, huh? Aiming high, Johnson. I like your style." He hummed thoughtfully. There is a CH-47 unit from Fort Braxton doing a long-haul navigation and cargo training exercise today. They're scheduled to be over Redwood National Park. But Redwood, your county. It's all trees, right? Easy to get creatively rerouted for a new simulated emergency resupply drill. Especially if the training records show an unexpected, let's call it a time-sensitive, community assistance request. My jaw dropped. "You think you can swing that? For you, Mike? And for the chance to mildly inconvenience an overzealous HOA president? Consider it swung. The brass loves good PR, especially if it involves interagency cooperation and saving lives. I'll need precise coordinates for your yard, a description of the payload, and you'll owe me a steak dinner. A very, very big steak dinner." "You got it, Dave. Coordinates coming right up. And Dave, make it memorable." "Oh, Johnson," Dave said, his voice pure mischief. "It'll be cinematic." I hung up, a wild grin spreading across my face. Dave said he might be able to divert the Chinook. Might, if the training objective aligned. He gave me a 30-minute window. If I could get the gear from our trapped trucks to a clear, accessible LZ my front yard, he'd try to make the pickup, 30 minutes, to move hundreds of pounds of gear by hand around Karen and her gate, my front yard. It was big enough, just barely. And crucially, not in Serenity Acres. It was, however, directly adjacent to it, separated only by a flimsy picket fence and Karen's meticulously trimmed hedge of absolute disapproval. Problem, our trucks, with all the gear, were still stuck behind Karen's infernal gate. The equipment backboards, medical packs, ropes, the Stokes basket, generators, was heavy. We couldn't just toss it over. Solution, I dialed another number. Bubba's Hauling and Landscaping. Bubba and his crew, Cletus and Earl, were local legends. They once moved a grand piano out of a third-story window for me, using nothing but pure grit. A block and tackle system that looked like it predated the invention of the wheel, and a profound disregard for the laws of physics. They also, as it happened, had a long and storied history of feuds with various local HOAs, over trivial matters like unauthorized commercial vehicle parking and excessive decibels emanating from lunchtime sandwich consumption. Bubba, Mike Johnson, I need you and the boys. And your biggest flatbed. And maybe that crane arm attachment you found last year. Bubba's voice boomed through the phone, a cheerful foghorn. Mikey, my man, what you brewing now? Last time it was that giant inflatable Rudolph for the Christmas parade, the one whose nose kept shorting out and electrocuting the elves. This is more urgent, Bubba, and involves sticking it to an HOA. Specifically, Darlene Henderson, Serenity Acres. A beat of stunned silence, then a delighted, almost primal whoop that nearly deafened me. Karen Henderson? The Serenity Acres Karen? Queen of the Clipboard Commandos? Boys, change of plans. We're going on a Karen safari. What's the cargo, Mike? And how much collateral enjoyment are we authorized to generate? Rescue equipment, Bubba. Several £100. We need to get it from behind her stupid gate, around her blockade to my place at 12 Maple Drive. Fast. And the limit on chaos is, let's say, memorable but not technically indictable. Consider it done, Mikey. We'll bring the big dolly and the generator for lights. Yeah, for emergency lighting assistance. Bubba was a creative thinker. Bubba, Cletus, and Earl arrived in a miraculously short 15 minutes, their ancient, battle-scarred flatbed truck, affectionately nicknamed the Beast of Burden, looking like it had recently survived a demolition derby. It was festooned with more straps, chains, and miscellaneous pieces of industrial equipment than strictly necessary for any landscaping job I'd ever witnessed. They looked like they were ready for Armageddon, or at least a very serious disagreement with a stubborn tree stump. The sight of the Beast of Burden, rumbling and backfiring, trying to navigate the narrow, tree-lined lane leading to the Serenity Acres access road, with me frantically waving them down, was a scene in itself. Karen, who had been pacing and muttering into her phone, whirled around, her eyes widening in horror. She was now filming us with an iPad, probably narrating for her future multi-million-dollar lawsuit against the forces of chaos and untidiness. "This is a restricted residential zone," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "What is that? That contraption? That vehicle is clearly in violation of at least 17 noise and emission bylaws. I'm calling the EPA and the Department of Ugly Trucks and the Historical Vehicle Preservation Society to have it condemned." Bubba, a man whose physique suggested a long and intimate relationship with gravity, merely grinned, revealing a startlingly gold tooth. He gave her a cheerful, two-fingered wave. "Mornin', darlin'. Official county business. Just here for the, Emergency Landscaping and Civic Beautification Initiative. Assisting Mr. Johnson here with a rapid horticultural extraction." This was where the physical comedy and fast-paced action kicked into high gear. We couldn't get the rescue trucks out. So Bubba, Cletus, Earl, myself, Sarah, and Tom formed a human and machine-assisted chain to move hundreds of pounds of critical gear over the gate, which Cletus, a man of few words and immense upper body strength, simply lifted off its hinges with a grunt after a brief, dismissive glance at the keypad. Through a hedge, "Sorry, Mr. Peterson, your prize-winning azaleas on the HOA side took a minor, unavoidable hit." Across a small, absurdly pristine ornamental fish pond Karen was particularly proud of. One of the heavy-duty Pelican cases, containing our advanced medical kit, might have briefly become a boat. Bartholomew the Coy looked rather put out. Karen was losing her mind. It was a spectacular implosion. She was running back and forth along her side of the now open gateway, her clipboard flapping uselessly, squawking about bylaws, property damage, trespassing, and the imminent collapse of societal order. "My koi! My imported Japanese show-quality koi! You'll pay for this! They're irreplaceable! That one's named Bartholomew. He has delicate sensibilities." Bubba, effortlessly hauling a portable generator that weighed more than I did, paused to peer into the pond. "Bartholomew looks like he's enjoying the refreshing aeration, ma'am. Good for his circulation." Other Serenity Acres neighbors were now appearing, drawn by the commotion. It was a mixed bag. Some were horrified, clutching their pearls and their small, yappy dogs, muttering about declining property values. Others were peeking through their blinds, stifling giggles and giving us furtive thumbs up. One old fella, Mr. Grumbles from down the street, who Karen had once fined $60 for having a garden gnome that was, and I quote, excessively whimsical and not in keeping with the community's aesthetic guidelines, was practically dancing a jig on his porch. "Give her what for, sonny?" he cackled, shaking a fist in Karen's general direction. "She said my birdbath was attracting undesirable avians and contributing to an unhygienic dispersal of guano. Said my prize-winning sunflower was obstructing a designated scenic view corridor, which was her kitchen window." Officer Miller was still there, looking increasingly overwhelmed and deeply regretting his career choices. He was mostly trying to keep Karen from physically assaulting Bubba with a rake she'd commandeered from a nearby flower bed. He'd taken to just saying, "Now, Mrs. Henderson, let's all remain calm and adhere to the principles of de-escalation," on a weary loop. It wasn't working. Karen didn't do de-escalation. She did apoplexy. The gear, every last piece, was finally moved from the rescue trucks, through the breach in Karen's defenses and onto Bubba's flatbed, which was now parked pointedly just outside the HOA boundary, half on the public road, half on my long-suffering front lawn. We were sweaty, muddy, adrenaline-jacked, and running on fumes and pure, unadulterated spite. My phone buzzed. A text from Dave. "Bird is in the air. ETA your LZ, T-minus 10 minutes. Hope your lawn ornaments are insured." It was now or never. No going back. I looked at the bullhorn Sarah had retrieved from our primary rescue truck. This was going to be good. I grabbed it, clambered onto the hood of Bubba's flatbed, and took a deep breath. Showtime. "Attention residents of Serenity Acres." My voice, amplified to an unholy volume, boomed across the unnaturally quiet cul-de-sacs, rattling windows and probably scaring squirrels in the next state. "Hear ye, hear ye. This is an important public service announcement. Due to the unwavering, unyielding, and frankly unhinged obstructionism of your HOA president, Mrs. Darlene Henderson." I paused for dramatic effect, savoring the collective gasp that rippled through the onlookers. Preventing a legal and morally obligatory mountain rescue operation for 2 injured citizens. Karen was now attempting to claw her way onto the flatbed, her face a mask of purple fury. Bubba, ever the gentleman, gently but firmly fended her off with a large, greasy tire iron he happened to be holding. Now, ma'am," he rumbled. "Safety first. Wouldn't want you to scuff your sensible shoes." I raised the bullhorn again, louder this time, enjoying the way Karen winced. "We will be conducting an emergency airlift of critical rescue equipment from my property at 12 Maple Drive." Yes, the one with the slightly overgrown lawn she keeps sending me annoyingly passive-aggressive notices about. This operation will involve a large military-grade helicopter. Expect significant noise, downdraft, and the potential for minor lawn ornament displacement. I suggest you secure your plastic flamingos, your tinkly wind chimes, and any small, easily startled pets or elderly relatives who may be prone to episodes of the vapors. This is for a good cause, mostly. Thank you for your involuntary cooperation and understanding. Have a tranquil and bylaw-compliant day." The silence that followed was profound, broken only by Karen's strangled, inhuman screech and the distant but rapidly approaching whump, 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 whump of heavy rotor blades. Oh, glorious day. And then it came. The Chinook. It was a monster, an olive-drab angel of mercy and minor property damage. It crested the tree line at the end of Maple Drive, a glorious, thundering beast blotting out the already weak morning sun. The sound was incredible. A deep, resonant roar that vibrated in your teeth and made your fillings hum. It maneuvered over my yard with surprising agility for such a behemoth. The downdraft flattening my already sad-looking grass, sending leaves, loose shingles, from my neighbor's shed this time. Oops, sorry, Mr. Henderson. Not Karen's husband. Different Henderson, long story. And a cascade of Karen's prize-winning rose petals everywhere. It was like a localized, very targeted hurricane, specifically designed to redecorate my lawn in a style best described as post-apocalyptic chic. Karen was now a screaming, flailing silhouette against the swirling debris. Her perfectly coiffed blonde helmet of hair looked like she'd stuck her finger in a high-voltage socket. Her clipboard, her symbol of authority, had taken flight, last seen achieving impressive altitude and heading towards the next zip code, possibly to terrorize a different neighborhood. And then it came. I found myself narrating in my head, a giddy, slightly manic grin plastered on my face. Oh, it was beautiful. Like watching the world's biggest, angriest leaf blower, but with a purpose, a noble purpose, and also a slightly deliciously petty one. The airlift crew, two figures visible in the open rear ramp of the Chinook, were professional and utterly unfazed by the suburban chaos unfolding below. They were probably Dave's buddies, and I had a sneaking suspicion they were enjoying this spectacle way too much. They lowered the cargo sling with practiced ease. Bubba, Cletus, and Earl, now sporting safety goggles they'd produced from somewhere. Bubba's truck was like a Mary Poppins bag of industrial equipment, expertly helped secure the neatly piled rescue gear to the sling. "All right, bring her down easy, boys," I yelled into the borrowed aviation radio Dave had instructed me to use, the wind threatening to rip the words from my mouth. "Watch the bird bath. No, my other bird bath. The one that isn't currently attempting to achieve escape velocity and join Karen's clipboard in the stratosphere." Karen's voice, though mostly drowned out by the rotor wash, was still discernible as a series of high-pitched shrieks. "My gazing ball! My authentic Victorian-era replica gazing ball! It's a family heirloom!" It was from a garden center clearance sale last year. I'd seen her haggling over the price. "I'll have your badges. I'll have your wings. I'll have your firstborn children for this transgression against decorum." The Chinook pilot's voice, calm and amused, crackled over my radio. It sounded suspiciously like Dave. "Payload secure, ground control, initiating ascent, and tell the lady in the pink tracksuit her plastic flamingo is about to achieve low Earth orbit. Looking good from up here. Over." The gear was lifted. Smoothly, majestically. The Chinook, its job done with brutal efficiency, gained altitude, banked sharply to avoid Mrs. Abernathy's prize-winning oak tree. Dave was good, very good, and thundered away towards Lost Man's Peak, a diminishing speck against the now clearing sky. Officer Miller was just standing there, his mouth agape, his official sheriff's department hat slowly spinning on the ground beside him like a forgotten tumbleweed. He looked like he'd just witnessed the rapture, but with more engine noise. Silence descended. Or relative silence. Just the sound of distant sirens, more authorities, no doubt, probably the FAA, the National Guard, and possibly a very confused representative from the Alien Welcome Committee. Karen Henderson hyperventilating into a recyclable grocery bag she'd found, and Mr. Grumbles on his porch, cackling with a delight so pure it was almost terrifying. My front yard looked like a giant had sneezed on it, but the gear was gone, up the mountain, where it needed to be. My phone rang. It was Sarah, her voice breathless but jubilant over the sat phone. "Mike, you magnificent crazy bastard, The gear's here. It landed practically on top of us. We're moving to the hikers now. They're going to be okay. You actually did it." Relief, potent and dizzying, flooded through me. It worked. It actually, impossibly, miraculously worked. Just then, a local news van, lights flashing, screeched to a halt at the curb. A perky young reporter with a microphone that looked bigger than her head jumped out, her eyes wide as she took in the scene of suburban devastation, mostly confined to my yard and Karen's now tragically de-petaled rose bushes. "Ma'am, ma'am," she chirped, thrusting the microphone towards Karen, who was now attempting to re-inflate her dignity. "We got reports of a military helicopter in a residential area. Can you tell us what happened here?" Karen, wild-eyed, clutching a snapped rose stem like a tragic scepter, drew herself up. "Happened?" she quavered, her voice trembling with outrage. "Anarchy happened. A military coup d'etat. They tried to assassinate my petunias with a warthog. A heavily armed, foliage-destroying warthog. It was a Chinook, Karen, designed for transport, not ground attack. But details. The sheriff himself arrived moments later, his face a grim mask, flanked by someone who looked suspiciously like the mayor, looking pale and flustered, and a stern-faced woman in a very severe business suit who was definitely 100% from the FAA. She was holding a slim leather briefcase and had an air about her that suggested she ate rule books for breakfast. I was expecting cuffs, or at least a very long, very unpleasant conversation in a small, windowless room. But I was ready. I'd had a few minutes to rehearse my lines while enjoying the lingering aroma of jet fuel and Karen's shattered composure. I explained the situation calmly, methodically. The blocked emergency route, a clear violation of County Ordinance 34/C. The deteriorating condition of the hikers, confirmed by radio logs. The lack of other viable extraction or access options due to weather and terrain. The critical life or death time factor. "Sheriff, Mayor, ma'am," I began, addressing the FAA lady who was currently examining a piece of my gutter lying forlornly in the driveway. Mrs. Henderson, in her capacity as HOA president, actively and with full knowledge of the circumstances, prevented a legal and morally obligatory rescue operation, thereby directly endangering the lives of 2 citizens. All alternative solutions were exhausted or deemed unviable due to exigent circumstances. I was rather proud of exigent circumstances. Sounded official. I therefore utilized a private resource, I emphasized private, operating from private property. Mine, mostly a small portion of the downdraft, may have encroached on Mr. Henderson's prize-winning zucchini patch, but that's a civil matter, I believe. To deliver essential life-saving equipment in an extreme and unforeseen circumstance. The pilots, I am informed, were on a pre-scheduled training flight in the region and offered immediate humanitarian assistance as per established interagency cooperation protocols when they became aware of the critical nature of the emergency. Dave had coached me well on that last part. Bless his devious, regulation-bending heart. Just then, as if on cue, the rescued hikers' families started arriving, having heard the commotion and the news reports that were already starting to filter out. They were tearfully thanking me, shaking my hand, telling the now gleefully scribbling news reporter that I was a hero, a lifesaver, a true champion of the people. This played very well. Public opinion is a wonderful, wonderful thing, especially when it's on your side, and the mayor is looking increasingly like he wants to offer you a key to the city just to make the good PR stick. Karen was still attempting to itemize damages for grievous emotional distress to her ornamental shrubbery, and the wanton destruction of a historically significant, circa 2022, plastic lawn flamingo. The FAA lady, however, was now looking at Karen's illegally installed and now slightly gateless gateway with a very sharp, very interested expression. I saw her make a note in a small, official-looking notebook. The fallout was, as they say, considerable. Karen Henderson found herself facing a raft of fines from the county for obstructing an emergency access route, for the unpermitted installation of a gate on a county easement, and, in a delightful twist of irony, for creating a public nuisance with her incessant shrieking. That last one might have been a slight exaggeration on Mr. Grumble's part when he gave his statement, but the sheriff seemed inclined to let it slide. The Serenity Acres HOA board, after an emergency meeting that reportedly involved a lot of yelling and the dramatic tearing up of bylaws, again, possibly Mr. Grumble's embellishing, voted to suspend her presidency pending a full review of her leadership style and fiscal management of the Petunia Fund. The access road to Lost Man's Peak is now permanently, undeniably open, with a large, newly installed county-funded sign that reads, "Emergency Vehicle Access, 24/7, no obstructions. Violators will be subject to immediate and severe fines, and their lawn ornaments may be subject to unexpected aerial relocation." Okay, I might have had a little input on the wording of that sign during a friendly chat with the county supervisor's aide, who, it turned out, had also once been fined by Karen for non-regulation mailbox coloration. As for me, I'm a local legend, the Chinook chappie, the guy who fought the HOA and won, with decisive air support. The Mountain Rescue Team's donation box has never been fuller. Bubba, Cletus, and Earl got a lifetime supply of free coffee from the diner up the street, and a plaque from an anonymous group calling themselves the Friends of Bartholomew the Coy. So, yeah. Did I go a little overboard? Maybe, just a tad. Did I technically violate a few city ordinances about noise levels and, I don't know, the unscheduled landing of military-grade heavy-lift helicopters in densely populated residential zones? Probably. The FAA lady gave me a very stern lecture, but ultimately no charges were filed, mostly because, as she put it, the paperwork would be a nightmare, and frankly, Mrs. Henderson's unpermitted gate was a far more egregious violation of federal aviation sightline regulations for potential emergency medical helicopter landings. I didn't even know that was a thing. But those hikers are safe. Bartholomew the Coy is back in his pond, reportedly undergoing therapy for PTSD, but otherwise unharmed. And Karen Henderson? Well, she learned a valuable, if somewhat windy, lesson about the difference between an HOA bylaw and a human life, and that sometimes the best way to cut through red tape is with a 15,000 horsepower, twin-engine, tandem rotor blade. Use that wisdom wisely, folks. A week later, I got a small, anonymous package in the mail. No return address. Inside, nestled on a bed of shredded HOA violation notices, was a miniature plastic flamingo. Attached to its leg was a tiny, perfectly crafted parachute, and a small, neatly printed note. "Thanks for the lift. Next steak dinner is on me. Tell Bartholomew I said hi. Dave." I put the flamingo on my desk. It serves as a reminder. Sometimes to do a little good, you have to be prepared to cause a little turbulence.